Your father is just a Marine. Miss Caldwell's voice cut across the room like a blade. Lily Harmon stood frozen at the front of the class, her poster trembling in her hands, her knuckles white. She was 8 years old. She had practiced this moment for a week. "Ma'am, he's a Navy SEAL," she whispered. The red marker uncapped. The words, "Not verified," landed across her drawing in slow, deliberate strokes. 22 children watched in silence. Not one moved. Lily's chin dropped. She did not cry, but something inside her broke. Quietly, completely, and without a sound. If this story moves you, subscribe to our channel and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Lily Harmon had not slept well the night before. She had lain on her bed with the poster propped against her pillow, rehearsing the words out loud in the dark until her mother knocked softly and told her it was past 10. "You know it by heart, baby," Claire had said from the doorway, her voice gentle but tired. Lily had nodded. But knowing something by heart and saying it in front of people were two entirely different things, and she understood that in the way only quiet children do. She arrived at Maplewood Ridge Elementary early, the morning still gray and cool off the Virginia coast. The hallways smelled the way they always did, floor wax and dry erase markers, and something vaguely institutional, the scent of a place where children were expected to behave. Lily walked carefully, holding the poster against her chest with both arms, the way her father had taught her to carry something fragile. "You protect what matters," he had told her once. She had not fully understood it then. She thought she understood it now. The poster had taken 4 days to finish. At the center was her father, Staff Chief Petty Officer Ethan Harmon, drawn in her best attempt at his NWU Type 3 uniform, the digital camouflage pattern rendered in careful green and brown crayon strokes. His posture straight, his expression serious, the way it always was in photographs. Beside him sat Shadow. She had spent the most time on Shadow, the broad chest, the upright ears, the tan gold and black coat that she had tried 3 times to get right, before her mother sat beside her and showed her how to layer the colors. Shadow's amber eyes looked almost real, she thought. Almost. Lily set the poster on her desk and smoothed the edges with her fingers. "That's a really cool drawing." Hannah Park leaned over from the next seat, her dark braids swinging forward. "Is that your dad?" "Yes." Lily kept her voice low. "And his dog." "What kind of dog is it?" "German Shepherd. His name is Shadow." Hannah studied the poster. "Your dad's in the Army?" "Navy," Lily said. "He's a SEAL." Hannah's eyes went wide. "Like the animal?" Lily almost smiled. "No, Navy SEAL. They're like Special Forces." She hesitated, then added, "He and Shadow do detection and rescue. It's classified mostly, but my dad told me some things." Hannah nodded slowly, absorbing this with the earnest gravity of a 7-year-old encountering something larger than her vocabulary. "That's the coolest hero report ever," she whispered. Lily looked at the poster again. She hoped so. Ms. Diane Caldwell arrived exactly on time, as she always did. Heels precise against the floor, blazer smooth, not a single thing about her suggesting she had rushed. She was the kind of teacher who seemed to exist in a permanent state of composure. Never flustered, never surprised, and rarely wrong, at least in her own estimation. She scanned the room the way she always did, a practiced sweep that cataloged everything without lingering. When her gaze passed over Lily's desk, it slowed. Lily felt it, the weight of that look settling on the poster. Miss Caldwell said nothing. She moved on. The morning passed through spelling, then reading, then the quiet shuffle of chairs being pulled forward as presentation time arrived. The Hero Project had been assigned 2 weeks earlier. Bring someone who inspires you, Ms. Caldwell had said. "Tell us what they do, why it matters, and what you have learned from them." The presentations so far have included a grandmother who had survived cancer, a firefighter uncle, a pediatric nurse. Each one had been received with nods and light applause, and a grade written in blue pen at the top of the page. Lily's name was called forth. She stood. Her legs felt strange. She walked to the front of the room and turned to face her classmates, holding the poster against her chest for one more second before lowering it so they could see. "My hero is my dad," she began. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. She cleared her throat and tried again. "His name is Ethan Harmon. He's a Navy SEAL stationed at Little Creek. He's been in the Navy for 11 years. She glanced at the poster. "And this is his canine partner, Shadow. Shadow is a German Shepherd. He's 4 years old. They work together on detection missions and hostage rescue training." She had barely finished the second sentence when Ms. Caldwell's hand went up. Not to interrupt, to signal a pause. The kind of pause that felt like a door closing. "Emily." She used the wrong name without noticing. "Let me stop you there." She tilted her head with an expression that might have looked like curiosity to someone who did not know better. "A Navy SEAL who works with a dog. Is that right?" "Yes, ma'am." "Where did you learn that?" "My dad told me." Miss Caldwell smiled faintly. It did not reach her eyes. "Your father told you that he is a Navy SEAL." Lily's grip tightened on the poster. "Yes, ma'am." "And you've seen him work? With this dog?" "I've seen Shadow twice. My dad sends pictures." Miss Caldwell folded her hands. "I see." She let the silence stretch just long enough to fill the room with discomfort before she continued. "Here's the thing, Lily. Navy SEALs typically don't work with canine units in that capacity. That's more common in Army Special Operations. So either your father is in a very unusual assignment, or perhaps you've mixed up some details." Lily's mouth opened. "I didn't mix it up." "I'm not accusing you of anything." Miss Caldwell's voice remained smooth, reasonable, the voice of someone performing patience. "I'm simply saying we can't verify this information." "My dad told me." Children sometimes hear things differently than they were said. A pause. "It happens." The room had gone still. 22 children sitting in the silence of witnesses who understood, even at 7 and 8 years old, that something unjust was occurring, and that none of them had the vocabulary or the power to name it. Miss Caldwell crossed to Lily's desk, picked up the poster, and carried it to the front. She uncapped the red marker. Lily watched her. The letters went down slowly. Not verified. Then beneath it, in smaller print, "See me after class." "I'll hold on to this," Ms. Caldwell said pleasantly, placing the poster in the tray at the corner of her desk. Not with the others. Separate. Lily stood at the front of the room, with nothing in her hands. "You can sit down," Ms. Caldwell said. Lily walked back to her seat. She did not look at Hannah. She did not look at anyone. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and stared at the surface of her desk as if it could absorb the heat climbing up the back of her neck. She would not cry. She had decided that before she left the house that morning, although she had not known she would need to decide it. At recess, she sat on the bench near the fence. Hannah came and sat beside her without asking. "She was wrong," Hannah said. Lily did not answer. "My mom says Navy SEALs do all kinds of stuff." "I know." Lily's voice was flat. "My dad told me." "You should tell her that." Lily turned and looked at Hannah with the expression of someone who has just learned something disappointing about how the world works. "I did," she said. "It didn't matter." Hannah had no answer to that. They sat together without speaking until the bell called them back inside. After school, Ms. Caldwell handed the poster back without comment, setting it on Lily's desk the way you might place something in a lost and found bin. Lily put it in her backpack. She did not look at the red writing. She already knew what it said. The walk home was 20 minutes. Lily took 30. She stopped at the corner of Maple and Fifth and sat down on a low retaining wall and looked at her sneakers for a while. The sky had gone gray and flat. A car passed, then another. She unzipped her backpack and looked at the poster. Not verified. As if her father were something she had invented. As if Shadow were a dream she had confused with reality. As if the photos on her bedside table, the careful voice on the phone 3 times a week, the birthday card that arrived 2 days late because mail from a forward operating base took time. As if all of it were something she had made up in the quiet of a fatherless house to make herself feel better. She zipped the backpack closed. At home, Claire was folding laundry at the kitchen table. She looked up when the door opened, reading Lily's silence the way mothers of deployed spouses learn to read silence, like a second language acquired under pressure. "What happened?" she asked. Lily set her backpack down and unzipped it. She did not say anything. She just placed the poster on the table. Claire looked at it for a long moment. Her jaw tightened. Her hand stopped moving. Then she looked at her daughter's face. Too still, too composed. The face of a child who had been holding something painful at arm's length for hours. "Did she say this to you in front of the class?" Claire asked quietly. "Yes. She called your father's service into question. She said I probably mixed it up." Lily sat down. "She used the wrong name, too. She called me Emily." Something shifted in Claire's expression. Not anger, not yet. Something colder and more deliberate. She set down the shirt she'd been folding. "You didn't mix anything up," Claire said. "I know." Lily looked at the table. "But she didn't believe me, and nobody said anything." Claire sat down across from her daughter. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car turned onto the street. "I'm going to call the school," Claire said. Lily looked up. "It won't help." Claire held her daughter's gaze. "Then I'll call your dad." Lily was quiet for a second. Then she said, very softly, "He's busy, Mom." "Not for this," Claire said. "He's never too busy for this." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire sat alone at the kitchen table with her phone in both hands. Ethan's name was on the screen. She stared at it for a long time. She knew what a call like this would cost him. The trip back arranged, the timeline compressed, the energy redirected from a man who was already running on too little sleep, in a place she could not picture clearly because he had never described it clearly, and she had long ago stopped asking. She pressed call anyway. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Claire." His voice was low, careful. The voice he used when he already sensed something had gone wrong. She told him. No embellishment, no editorializing, just the facts. The classroom, the red marker, the wrong name, the poster in the tray. Their daughter sitting on a retaining wall alone, with a backpack full of something she deserved to be proud of. There was silence on the line. The kind of silence she had learned to read over 11 years. Not absence. Containment. "She put it in the separate tray," Ethan said quietly. "Not with the others." "Yes," another pause. "And she made Lily apologize." Claire closed her eyes. "Not directly, but she made her feel like she owed one." The silence stretched. Then Ethan said, very evenly, "I'm coming home." "Ethan. Early." I'll clear it with the CO tomorrow morning." "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to." A pause. "That's not why I'm doing it." Claire opened her eyes. The kitchen was quiet around her. Lily's posters sat on the table, the red letters face down, the drawing of Shadow and Ethan facing upward toward the ceiling. "When?" she asked. "2 days," Ethan said. "Maybe less." Claire looked at the poster, at Shadow's amber eyes, drawn careful and true by the hands of a child who had believed, without any doubt at all, that the people she loved were worth standing up for. "Okay," she said. "Tell her I called," Ethan said. "She's asleep." "Tell her anyway." He paused. "Tell her she didn't do anything wrong." Claire pressed her lips together. "I already did." "Tell her again," Ethan said quietly. "From me." Claire did not sleep. She lay on her side of the bed, with the lights off and the ceiling above her and Ethan's pillow untouched beside her, the way it had been untouched for 4 months. And she stared at nothing and thought about a little girl standing at the front of a classroom, holding a poster she had spent 4 days making, and a woman with a red marker, deciding in under 30 seconds that none of it was real. She got up at 5:15. She made coffee she did not drink. She sat at the kitchen table with her phone and typed a message to the school's main office requesting a meeting with the principal. Not the assistant principal, the principal. She read it 3 times. She sent it. By 6:40, Lily was downstairs in her school uniform, backpack on, face composed in that careful way that broke Claire's heart a little more each time she saw it. Lily had learned to compose her face the way children who wait a lot learn to compose themselves, as a form of protection, a way of keeping the inside from showing on the outside. "You don't have to go back today," Claire said. "I can call you in sick." Lily shook her head. "That makes it worse." "How does that make it worse?" "Because then she thinks she won." Lily picked up her backpack straps with both hands. "Dad says you never give ground unless you have a reason to." Claire looked at her daughter for a long moment. "Your dad said that?" "Last deployment, we were talking about a girl at school who kept taking my seat at lunch." Lily almost smiled. "He said you hold your ground and you wait." Claire swallowed. "Okay," she said. "Then we hold our ground." Lily nodded once. She walked out the door. Claire stood in the kitchen alone, listening to the sound of small sneakers on the front walk, and felt something harden in her chest. Not anger. Something quieter than anger. Resolve. At school, the morning started the way the previous morning had ended, in a particular kind of silence that had texture to it. The substitute teacher from the day before, a kind woman named Mrs. Delaney, had been replaced by Miss Caldwell again, restored to her classroom as though nothing had occurred, as though the red letters on a child's poster were simply a matter of academic policy and not a matter of dignity. Ms. Caldwell did not acknowledge Lily when she walked in. That was its own kind of statement. Lily sat down. She put her hands on the desk. She waited. The morning passed through math and reading. At 10:15, Miss Caldwell stood at the front of the room and said, in her smooth, measured tone, that she wanted to return to yesterday's discussion about accuracy in research. She said this was an important skill. She said that even when we love someone very much, it was possible to misrepresent what they do, not out of dishonesty, but out of misunderstanding. She did not say Lily's name. She did not have to. Hannah Park's head turned sharply toward Lily. Lily did not move. "Can you be wrong about something your own dad told you?" Miss Caldwell asked the class. It was framed as a genuine question. It was not a genuine question. A boy named Marcus in the second row raised his hand. My dad says stuff that isn't true sometimes, he offered helpfully. Exactly, Miss Caldwell said. Parents simplify things for their children. That's natural. But in a research context, we need primary sources. Lily's hand went up. Miss Caldwell paused. Lily? My dad is the primary source. Her voice was steady. He told me directly about his unit and about Shadow. And you're certain you understood him correctly? Yes, ma'am. Miss Caldwell tilted her head. Okay. She moved on. The word okay carried nothing in it. No concession, no acknowledgement. Just the smooth, frictionless surface of someone who had decided the conversation was over without saying so. Lily lowered her hand. Her jaw was tight. She looked at the desk. Hannah leaned over and whispered, "You were right." "I know," Lily whispered back. By lunchtime, 3 other children have asked Lily questions about her dad. Not mean questions, genuine ones. The questions that children ask when curiosity overtakes social caution. Is he really a seal? Does Shadow live with you? Can he breathe underwater? Has he ever been shot? Lily answered each one carefully. No, Shadow lives on base. Yes, really a seal. No, he can't breathe underwater. He uses a rebreather. And to the last question, she said simply, I don't know. He doesn't tell me everything. She said that last part without sadness. It was just true. There were things her father carried that he did not bring home, and she had understood that, the way she understood most things about his work, by feeling the shape of the silence around it. What she did not know, sitting in that cafeteria with her apple slices and her careful composure, was that 200 miles away, Ethan Harmon was sitting in his commanding officer's workspace, explaining, in measured, precise terms, why he needed 72 hours of emergency family leave. Commander Dale Pritchard was a man who did not give ground easily. He was built like someone who had made a personal philosophy out of resistance, broad through the shoulders, short on sentiment, deeply skeptical of anything that could not be justified in operational terms. He listened to Ethan with his hands flat on the desk, and his expression unreadable. A teacher, he said when Ethan finished. Yes, sir. Questioned your daughter's project. Put it in the trash tray, sir, in front of the class. Then implied, in front of the class again this morning, that my daughter had misunderstood what I do. Pritchard was quiet for a moment. And you need 72 hours to handle this. I need 48, sir. I'm requesting 72 for margin. Another pause. Pritchard looked at him steadily. You understand I can't give leave every time a family situation comes up. I understand, sir. This is the first time in 4 years I've asked. That landed. Pritchard knew it was true. He had Ethan's file in his head the way good commanding officers kept files. Not on paper, in memory. 11 years of service. 4 deployments. 0 unexcused absences. 0 personal leave requests. 0 complaints. Shadow goes with you, Pritchard said. Ethan blinked. Sir? You're taking him off base for certification maintenance anyway next week. Consider this in advance. Pritchard picked up a pen. Shadow goes. Keeps it official. Ethan held the commander's gaze. Something passed between them. Not warmth exactly, but understanding. The recognition between 2 men who did not say more than necessary, that more had just been said than was on the surface. Thank you, sir, Ethan said. Don't thank me. Pritchard signed the form. Just fix it. Ethan drove home the next morning, Shadow riding in the back of the government vehicle. Head up, ears forward, watching the highway unspool behind them with the attentiveness of an animal that never fully went off duty. Ethan drove in silence. He was not the kind of man who filled silence with noise. He thought better quiet. He thought about his daughter standing at the front of a classroom. He thought about the red letters. He thought about a woman who had decided in 30 seconds that an 8-year-old's truth was worth less than her own assumption. He did not let the anger go anywhere it shouldn't. He had learned that a long time ago. Anger was a tool. It needed to be kept clean and used precisely. He called Claire from the road. 2 hours out, he said. She doesn't know you're coming, Claire said. I didn't tell her. Good. A pause. How is she? She went back today. Claire's voice was careful, the way it got when she was managing something. Ms. Caldwell used the class discussion to take another shot. Didn't use Lily's name. Didn't have to. Ethan was quiet for a moment. She went back anyway. She said you told her never to give ground unless you have a reason to. The silence on the line changed. Ethan exhaled slowly. She said that. Word for word. He drove in silence for a moment. In the back, Shadow shifted his weight and settled again. I'll be there by noon, Ethan said. Don't call the school yet. I want to go in tomorrow morning. Ethan, you should let me handle the official complaint first. I already emailed the principal. I know. Let me handle what I need to handle. What exactly are you planning? He considered the question the way he considered most things, from multiple angles, for longer than the silence required. I'm planning to walk in, he said finally. That's all. Claire knew better than to take that at face value. She had been married to this man for 9 years. She knew what walking in meant when he said it in that particular tone. Calm, economical, precise. The tone of someone who had already run every scenario and chosen the one that ended correctly. Don't make it worse, she said. I'm going to make it better, Ethan said. There's a difference. He arrived at noon. Lily was still at school. The house was quiet. He let Shadow off the leash in the backyard and stood at the kitchen counter and looked at the poster on the table. The one Claire had left face up, and read the red letters without touching it. Not verified. He looked at Shadow's amber eyes in the drawing. He looked at his own face, rendered in crayon by a child who had studied his photographs the way other children studied cartoons. Carefully, lovingly, trying to get every detail right. The uniform, the posture, the way he stood. He picked the poster up and looked at it for a long time. Then he set it down carefully and went to wait for his daughter to come home. When the front door opened at 3:20 and Lily walked in and saw him standing in the hallway, she stopped. Her backpack slid off one shoulder. Her face, composed all day with everything she had, finally broke open. She crossed the hallway in 4 steps and put her arms around him and held on, face pressed against his chest, and did not say anything at all. Ethan held her with one hand between her shoulder blades and did not say anything either. Sometimes there was nothing to say. Sometimes you just had to be there, solid and present and real, so that the person holding on could feel the difference between what was true and what someone with a red marker had tried to make her believe. Shadow pushed through the back door and padded into the hallway and sat beside them, amber eyes steady, tail low and still. After a while, Lily pulled back and looked up at her father. "You came home," she said. "I told you I would." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I didn't tell anyone you were coming." "I know." "She did it again today," Lily said, "in front of the class. She didn't say my name, but everyone knew." Ethan nodded once. He did not rush to speak. He waited until Lily had finished, until every piece of it had been said. The morning and the classroom and the careful cutting remarks dressed up as academic policy. And then he looked at his daughter with the steadiness of a man who had been in rooms far more dangerous than a third-grade classroom and never once looked away from what needed to be done. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'm going to school with you." Lily looked at him. Then she looked at Shadow. then back at her father. "Are you going to wear your uniform?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. A pause. "Is Shadow coming?" Ethan looked at the dog. Shadow looked back. "Shadow's coming," he said. Lily was quiet for a moment. Something settled in her face. Not relief. Something more than relief. The particular stillness of a child who has been carrying something alone for too long and has just felt another pair of hands close around it. "Okay," she said. She bent down and rested her forehead briefly against Shadow's broad skull. The dog did not move. His breathing was slow and even, the breathing of an animal trained to stay calm in the exact moments when everything else stops being calm. Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. Tomorrow was already decided. Ethan was up before 5. He did not need an alarm. He had not needed an alarm in 11 years. His body had learned to surface from sleep on its own terms, alert before his eyes were fully open, already assessing. He dressed in the dark. NWU Type 3, the digital camouflage pattern that Lily had tried so hard to replicate in crayon. He moved through each step with the same deliberate economy he brought to every preparation. Nothing hurried, nothing wasted. Shadow watched him from the floor, head up, tracking every movement the way he always did when the uniform came out, understanding without being told that today was a working day. Claire appeared in the doorway. She had not slept much either. She stood with her arms crossed loosely, watching him. "You sure about this?" she said. "Yes. Ethan." She waited until he looked at her. "She's a teacher. There are channels." "We tried the channels." He straightened his collar. "You emailed the principal 3 days ago. No response." Claire's jaw tightened because she could not argue with that. "Just don't make it a confrontation." "It won't be a confrontation," he said. "A confrontation requires 2 people who both think they have a case." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once, and went to wake Lily. Lily came downstairs in her uniform, hair brushed, backpack on, and stopped at the bottom of the stairs when she saw her father fully dressed. She looked at him the way she always looked at him in uniform. Not with the distant admiration she might have shown a stranger, but with a specific, private recognition. The look of a child who understood that the person inside the uniform and the person who read her bedtime stories over video call were the same man. "Ready?" Ethan said. "Yes," she said. Shadow rose from beside the kitchen table, stretched once, and fell into position at Ethan's left side. They walked to school. The morning was cool and quiet. Lily walked beside her father and did not say much. She was processing something, he could tell. She had always processed things the way he did, inwardly, carefully, turning them over before she spoke. Halfway there, she said, "What if she gets in trouble because of me?" Ethan kept walking. "She made her choices. Those have consequences." "But I don't want anyone to get fired because of a poster." He looked down at her. This stopped being about the poster the second she did it again the next morning. Lily considered that. "What's it about now?" "It's about whether the people in that building understand that my daughter tells the truth." He paused. "And that it matters." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Shadow looks really official today." Ethan glanced at the dog. Shadow was moving with the clean, ground-covering stride he used on working days. Head level, ears forward. Every step placed with the quiet authority of an animal that knew exactly what it was. "He always looks official," Ethan said. "I know," Lily said. "But today, especially." They arrived at Maplewood Ridge just after the morning bell. The front walk was still busy with parents and children filtering through the entrance. The noise dropped in a radius around them as they moved through it. Not because of anything threatening. Because of presence. The uniform. The dog. The particular way Ethan walked that communicated, without a single word, that he was not in a hurry and could not be redirected. At the front desk, the secretary, a woman named Mrs. Paulson, who had worked the front office for 14 years and believed she had seen everything, looked up and stopped typing. Ethan placed his ID on the counter. "Ethan Harmon, I'm here to speak with whoever's in charge of classroom 3B and whoever is running this building today." Mrs. Paulson looked at the ID. She looked at Shadow. She looked back at Ethan. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Mr. Marsh usually requires—" "I understand," Ethan said. "Please let him know I'm here." He did not raise his voice. He did not lean forward. He simply waited, in the way of someone who has learned that patience is not passive. It is pressure, applied quietly over time. Mrs. Paulson picked up the phone. Gerald Marsh arrived in the hallway 3 minutes later, blazer slightly crooked, expression arranged into its default setting of careful cordiality. He saw Ethan and the uniform and Shadow, and the cordiality shifted, not disappearing exactly, but thinning. "Mr. Harmon," Marsh said. He extended his hand. Ethan shook it. "We weren't expecting you this morning." "I know." Ethan's voice was level. "My daughter has been back in that classroom for 2 days since her project was publicly dismissed. Yesterday, Miss Caldwell used a class discussion to imply, again, in front of everyone, that Lily had misrepresented my service. I'd like to address that directly." Marsh cleared his throat. Of course. Why don't we step into my office and—" "I'd like to address it in the classroom," Ethan said. A pause. "That's not standard procedure." "It happened in the classroom," Ethan said. "It should be corrected in the classroom." Marsh looked at Shadow. The dog was sitting perfectly still at Ethan's left leg, amber eyes forward, breathing slow and even. He looked, to anyone watching, like the most composed individual in the building. "The dog," Marsh began, "is a certified military working dog attached to my unit," Ethan said. "His presence is covered under base certification protocol. He will behave. I can't promise the same for everyone else." It was said without a smile. Marsh could not tell whether it was a warning or simply a statement of fact. Either way, he found himself nodding. "Give me 5 minutes," Marsh said. He turned and walked quickly toward the third-grade wing. Ethan waited. Lily stood beside him, fingers hooked around one backpack strap, watching the hallway. A group of second-graders passed with their teacher and slowed almost to a stop. 12 pairs of eyes swiveling toward Shadow with the helpless magnetism of children encountering something extraordinary. "Is that a police dog?" one boy whispered loudly. "Military," Lily said quietly, without looking at them. There was something in her voice that had not been there 3 days ago. Not pride exactly. Certainty. The second graders kept moving. Down the hall, inside classroom 3B, Ms. Diane Caldwell was standing at the whiteboard, running through the morning's attendance, when Gerald Marsh opened the door and stepped inside with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Tight, unsmiling, stripped of its usual diplomatic softness. "Diane," he said, "a word. Now." She set down her marker. The class watched. She followed him into the hallway, and Marsh pulled the door partially closed behind them. "Lily Harmon's father is here," he said, "in uniform, with the dog." Ms. Caldwell's expression did not change. "I have a class." "I know you have a class. He wants to come in." "That is completely inappropriate." "Diane." Marsh kept his voice low, but the softness was gone from it. "I read your email last night. The one where you described Lily's project as a case study in unverified family narratives." He paused. "And then I looked up Chief Petty Officer Ethan Harmon. It took me 4 minutes." He held that silence for exactly as long as it needed to hold. 4 minutes. Miss Caldwell's face did not change, but something behind it did. A small, almost imperceptible shift, like a wall absorbing an impact it was not built to fully resist. "I was applying academic standards," she said. "You were applying assumptions," Marsh said. "And then you doubled down on them the next morning in front of the class." He straightened. "He's coming in. I'm coming with him. And you are going to stand there and listen." He opened the door. Ethan walked in. The room went silent, the way rooms go silent when something shifts the air in them. 22 children, some mid-sentence, some mid-thought, all of them stopping at the sight of the uniform and the dog, moving through the doorway with the kind of quiet authority that does not announce itself because it does not need to. Shadow sat immediately at Ethan's left leg. Perfect position, chest forward, tail still, not a single muscle unnecessary. Ms. Caldwell stood at the front of the room. She had turned to face the door. Her posture was controlled, her expression professional, but her hands, folded in front of her, were pressed together too tightly. Ethan looked at her once. Then he looked at the class. He found Lily in the third row and held her gaze for 1 second, just long enough for her to know he saw her. Lily sat with her hands flat on her desk, her chin level, watching her father the way a compass needle watches north. "Ms. Caldwell," Ethan said. His voice carried without effort in the quiet room. "My name is Ethan Harmon. I'm Lily's father. I'm a Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy, currently assigned to SEAL Team 4 out of Little Creek." He reached into the folder under his arm and placed 3 documents on the edge of the nearest desk. Assignment orders, unit verification letter, Shadow's military working dog certification. He did not touch them again. "You're welcome to look at those." Miss Caldwell looked at the documents. She did not move toward them. "I'm not here to embarrass you," Ethan continued. "I'm not here to create a problem. I'm here because my daughter stood in this room and told the truth, and was told it wasn't real." He paused. "And then she came back the next day and was told it again, more carefully, in front of the same people." The room was absolutely still. Even the children who did not fully understand what was happening understood that something important was. Miss Caldwell opened her mouth. "Mr. Harmon, She spent 4 days making that poster," Ethan said. Not loudly. Just clearly. "She knows what I do because I told her. She knows Shadow because I showed her. She stood up here and she told the truth." He looked at the teacher steadily. "And you put a red marker through it." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Ms. Caldwell's composure held, but only just. Her fingers tightened against each other. "I questioned the scope of what she described," she said. "Navy SEALs working with canine units is not standard. SEAL team units operating with military working dogs for detection and support operations has been documented protocol for over a decade," Ethan said. "If you had any uncertainty, there were 100 ways to verify that privately. You chose to do it publicly, in front of her class, twice." Ms. Caldwell said nothing. "She apologized," Ethan said, "for telling the truth. She apologized because you made her feel like she owed one." He let that sit. "My daughter does not owe anyone an apology for the truth." Marsh stepped forward. His voice was quiet and carried no room for negotiation. "Diane, I think what Mr. Harmon is asking for is straightforward. I think we should start there." Miss Caldwell looked at the documents on the desk. She looked at Marsh. She looked, finally, at Lily, who was sitting in the third row with her hands flat on her desk and her eyes clear and her chin exactly level. Something in Miss Caldwell's face shifted, not dramatically, not with visible emotion. But the wall that had been holding everything in its practiced, professional position came down by one deliberate degree. And what was underneath it was not defiance. It was the face of someone who had just fully understood, for the first time, what they had actually done. She turned to Lily. The class waited. "Lily," Miss Caldwell said. Her voice was different now, stripped of its smooth, instructional surface. Just a voice. "I was wrong. I made an assumption about your father's service that was not based on evidence. I let that assumption shape how I treated your work." She paused. "And then I let my pride keep me from correcting it." Another pause, shorter. "I'm sorry." 22 children did not move. Lily looked at her teacher for a long moment. Her expression was not triumphant. It was not cold. It was the expression of a child who has been carrying something heavy for 3 days and has just been allowed, finally, to set it down. "Thank you," Lily said quietly. Shadow shifted his weight slightly beside Ethan and settled again, amber eyes steady, breathing slow. He had been trained for rooms full of chaos and noise and threat. This room had none of those things now. What it had instead was something rarer. The particular stillness that follows a correction made honestly, a wrong named plainly, and a truth that had waited without breaking. Ethan picked up his documents from the desk. He looked at Marsh. "I'd like to schedule a formal meeting this afternoon," he said, "about the process going forward." Marsh nodded. 2:00. Ethan nodded once. He looked at Lily a final time, steady and sure. She looked back at him the same way. Then he turned and walked out, Shadow rising smoothly to follow, the leash loose between them. Both of them moving with the unhurried certainty of two partners who had just done exactly what they came to do. The 2:00 meeting was not what Gerald Marsh had expected. He had prepared for tension. He had prepared for Ethan Harmon to walk into the conference room the way some military parents walked into school meetings, with grievance stacked on grievance, voice rising, demands escalating. He had his talking points ready. Procedural review, constructive dialogue, moving forward together. He did not need any of them. Ethan arrived at 1:58. Shadow settled at his feet before the chair was fully pulled out. Claire sat beside Ethan, hands folded on the table, her posture carrying the particular composure of a woman who had been managing difficult rooms alone for years, and had simply decided this was one more. She did not look nervous. She looked finished waiting. Ms. Caldwell arrived last. She sat at the far end of the table with a yellow legal pad she did not write on, and an expression that had been carefully reassembled since the morning, but had not fully recovered its original shape. There were cracks in it now, small ones, but visible. Marsh opened the meeting. He said the school took the matter seriously. He said procedures were being reviewed. He said he wanted to ensure all parties had a chance to be heard. Ethan let him finish. Then he opened his folder and placed a second set of documents on the table. These were not the same as the morning's. These were different. Marsh leaned forward and read the top page. His expression shifted. "This is a formal complaint," he said. "Yes," Ethan said. "Filed with the district." "Filed this morning, before I came in." Ethan's voice was even. "I wanted on record that I did not file this to damage anyone's career. I filed it because my daughter was publicly humiliated twice in the same classroom, and the first time I raised the concern through my wife's email, it went unanswered for 72 hours. Marsh set the paper down. He did not look at Ms. Caldwell. That itself said something. "The district will conduct its own review," Ethan continued. I'm not here to preempt that. I'm here because there are 3 things I want from this school before I go back to base, and I want them agreed to in this room, today, not in a letter that arrives 6 weeks from now." Marsh straightened his tie. "What 3 things?" "First, Lily's project gets a grade, a real one, based on what she presented, not on whether a teacher believed it before she verified it." He paused. "Second, the school establishes a written protocol for how student presentations about family service are handled. Private verification. No public questioning. No red markers in front of the class." Another pause. "Third, Lily gets to finish her presentation, in front of the class, with her poster, the way she planned to do it 4 days ago." The room was quiet. Miss Caldwell looked up from her legal pad for the first time. "I already apologized to her this morning." "I know," Ethan said. "In front of the class, which took something. I'm not dismissing that." He looked at her directly. "But an apology and a correction are 2 different things. She was stopped mid-presentation. She never got to finish. That needs to be remedied." Ms. Caldwell looked at Marsh. Marsh looked at the complaint document. The silence stretched long enough to become its own kind of answer. "Those are reasonable requests," Marsh said finally. Ms. Caldwell's jaw tightened, not in defiance, in the specific discomfort of someone who knows they have no argument left and is learning, slowly, what that feels like. "I can arrange for Lily to complete her presentation tomorrow morning," she said. Her voice was controlled. "If that's acceptable." Ethan looked at Claire. Claire gave him the smallest nod. "That's acceptable," he said. Marsh exhaled. He reached for a pen. "I'll have the protocol drafted by end of week. The grade correction will be processed through the academic office by tomorrow afternoon." He looked at Ethan. "Is there anything else?" Ethan considered the question. He looked at Shadow, who was lying with his chin on his paws, amber eyes half open, radiating the absolute calm of an animal that has assessed every variable in the room and found nothing requiring action. "There's one more thing," Ethan said. He reached into the folder a final time and placed a single sheet on the table. "This is Shadow's unit profile. Training certifications, deployment record, commendations. I'd like it kept on file here." He looked at Marsh. "So that the next time someone's child talks about this dog, there's something in this building that confirms he's real." Nobody spoke for a moment. Then something happened that no one in the room had anticipated. Ms. Caldwell picked up the profile. She read it. Not quickly, not performatively, but actually read it, her eyes moving down the page, taking in the years of training, the operational deployments, the commendation for a recovery operation in 2021 that had located a missing child in under 4 hours. She read to the bottom. Then she set it down. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I know you didn't," Ethan said. "That's why I'm leaving it here." The meeting ended without ceremony. Marsh shook hands with both of them. Ms. Caldwell gathered her legal pad and her carefully reconstructed composure and walked to the door. And then she stopped. She turned back, not to Marsh, not to Ethan, but to Claire. "Mrs. Harmon," she said. Claire looked at her. "I know this doesn't fix what happened." Miss Caldwell's voice was stripped of its professional polish. What was underneath it was not warm, but it was honest. "But I want you to know that I understand now what it cost Lily to stand up there. And I understand what it cost you to send her back." She paused. "I'm sorry I made that necessary." Claire held the woman's gaze for a long moment. She had held a lot of things alone for a long time, and she did not let go of them easily or theatrically. But something in her shoulders, the particular set that had been there since Monday morning, when she had read the red letters on her daughter's poster, came down by one small, genuine degree. "Thank you," Claire said. That was all. It was enough. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with Lily while Claire made dinner. Shadow was stretched on the floor between them, and Lily had her hand resting on his back the way she always did when she needed something solid beneath her. "She apologized again," Lily said. "This time to you." "To your mom," Ethan said. "Same thing." He almost smiled. "Not exactly." Lily scratched behind Shadow's ear absently. "Tomorrow, I have to do the presentation again." "You don't have to do anything," Ethan said. "You get to." She considered that distinction. "What if I get nervous?" "You'll get nervous." "That doesn't help." "I know." He looked at her. "You'll get nervous and you'll do it anyway. That's not a prediction. That's a description of who you already are." Lily looked at Shadow. Shadow's amber eye opened slightly in her direction, then closed again. The easy, total trust of an animal that had decided long ago that the people beside him were worth resting next to. "Will you be there?" Lily asked. "I'll be at the door," Ethan said. "I can't come in again without an invitation, but I'll be at the door." "Shadow too?" "Shadow too." She nodded slowly. She seemed to be measuring something internally, the way she always measured things before she accepted them. Then she said, "Dad, why did she do it? The first time? Why did she just decide I was lying?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. He did not reach for a comfortable answer. He never gave Lily comfortable answers when honest ones were available. "Because it was easier," he said. "She looked at you, and she looked at what she expected, and you didn't fit it. And instead of questioning her expectation, she questioned you." Lily processed that. "Because of where we live? Because Mom works at the grocery store?" Ethan held his daughter's gaze. "Maybe. Probably." He paused. "It happens. People look at what's in front of them, and they fill in the parts they don't know with whatever they already believe." A beat. "The problem is, she never checked whether she was right before she acted." "Why didn't she just ask?" "That's the right question," he said. "That's exactly the right question." Lily turned that over. "I don't want to be like that," she said. "When I grow up, I don't want to just decide things about people." "Then you won't be," Ethan said simply. "How do you know?" "Because you just asked why instead of who." He looked at her steadily. "People who ask why don't usually end up deciding things without evidence." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What happens to her now?" "That's up to the district." "But the complaint you filed is on the record," Ethan said. "What they do with it is their decision. I made sure the truth was documented. What happens next isn't mine to control." Claire set a bowl of pasta on the table. She looked at Lily. "Enough for tonight," she said gently. "Eat something." Lily reached for her fork. Then she stopped. "Mom?" When you called Dad, the first night," she paused. "Were you scared he'd be angry?" Claire looked at her daughter for a moment. Then she sat down. "No," she said. "I was scared he'd blame himself. For being away." She glanced at Ethan. "He always does." Ethan looked at the table. "Did you?" Lily asked him. A pause that lasted exactly as long as the truth required. "For about 10 minutes," he said. "And then?" "And then I remembered that being away wasn't the same as being wrong." He looked up. "And that coming back was something I could actually do." Lily looked at her father, and at her mother, and at Shadow stretched between them on the floor like ballast, like the physical weight of everything reliable in her life, gathered into one sleeping dog. She thought about the poster with the red letters. She thought about standing at the front of the room with nothing in her hands. She thought about tomorrow, about finishing what she had started, about saying the words she had practiced for a week and never fully gotten to say. My hero is my dad. It was still true. It was truer now than it had been before. Not because he had shown up in uniform, not because he had placed documents on a conference table, not because a teacher had finally lowered her voice and admitted she was wrong. It was truer because of the 10 minutes, because he had felt the blame and then set it down, because he had packed his gear and driven 200 miles and walked through a school hallway without raising his voice, and when it was over, he had sat at a kitchen table and answered his daughter's questions honestly instead of giving her the easy version. That was the thing about her father that no poster could fully capture, and no red marker could touch. He always came back, and he always told her the truth. Shadow's tail moved once against the floor, a slow, rhythmic beat, and went still again. Tomorrow was already waiting. Lily did not sleep well, not because she was afraid, exactly, but because tomorrow had taken up too much space in her chest for sleep to fit alongside it. She lay in the dark and rehearsed the words, not because she had forgotten them. She had never forgotten them. She rehearsed them because saying them out loud in her own room, in the quiet, felt like practice for something that now meant more than it had the first time. The first time she had been nervous about being believed. Tomorrow she already knew she would be. That was different. That was something else entirely. At 6:15 she was downstairs before either of her parents. Shadow was already awake, sitting beside the back door with his ears up, watching her come down the stairs with the calm attention of an animal that categorized everything and found most things manageable. She sat on the floor beside him and put her arm around his neck and felt the steady warmth of him, the slow rise and fall of his breathing, and she stayed there for a while without saying anything. "You ready?" she said, finally. Shadow turned his head and looked at her with one amber eye, level and clear. "Yeah," she said. "Me too." Ethan found her there when he came downstairs at 6:30. He stood in the doorway for a moment without speaking. Lily did not look up. She knew he was there the same way she always knew. Some peripheral awareness she had developed over years of listening for a door, a step, a voice on the phone. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He crossed the room and sat on the floor beside her, back against the cabinet, legs stretched out. Shadow shifted and leaned his weight briefly against Ethan's shoulder, then settled again between them. The three of them sat there in the early quiet of the kitchen, and nobody said anything for a minute. And it was the best minute of Lily's week. "Tell me the opening line," Ethan said. Lily looked straight ahead. "My hero is my dad." "Keep going." "His name is Ethan Harmon. He's a chief petty officer in the United States Navy. He's been serving for 11 years. And this," she paused the way she had practiced, the pause that made space for what came next, "is his partner, Shadow." Ethan was quiet. "Is that okay?" Lily asked. "It's better than okay," he said. "I changed the pause. Originally I didn't have a pause there." "The pause is right," he said. "Let it breathe." Claire came downstairs at 6:50 and found all three of them still on the floor. She stood in the doorway with her coffee mug and looked at her husband and her daughter's hand resting on a military working dog who had decided, apparently, that the kitchen floor was an entirely acceptable place to be on a Thursday morning. She did not say anything. She pressed her lips together and looked at the ceiling for a moment, and then walked to the counter and poured her coffee. "Breakfast in 10 minutes, she said. Her voice was steady. Almost. The walk to school felt different from the day before. The day before had been purposeful, forward-moving, charged with the specific energy of a situation about to be addressed. This morning was quieter. Ethan was in civilian clothes, jeans and boots and a dark jacket, and Shadow moved beside him on a loose leash. And Lily walked on the other side with her backpack and her reprinted poster, the one Claire had stayed up past midnight to remake. Every crayon line restored, the red letters gone, the drawing clean and true. At the gate, Ethan stopped. Lily looked up at him. "I'll be at the door," he said. "I know. You don't need me in the room." She considered that. "I know that too." He crouched to her eye level, the way he always did when something mattered, when he wanted her to receive it face to face and not from above. 4 days ago, you stood up in that room and you told the truth, and it cost you something. He looked at her steadily. Today you're going back. That's not nothing, Lily. Most adults won't do what you're about to do. Lily's chin wobbled once. She pressed her lips together and held it. "I don't want to cry in front of the class." "Then don't," he said. "But if you do, it won't mean you're weak. It'll mean you're honest." He paused. "And that's the whole point." She nodded. Then she turned and walked through the gate. At the door of classroom 3B, she stopped. She straightened her backpack. She took one breath, slow, the way her father had taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth, until the ground felt solid beneath her feet. Then she walked in. Ms. Caldwell was already at the front. The class was settling into their seats, the ordinary shuffle and noise of 22 children beginning a Thursday. When Lily walked in, Hannah looked up immediately and smiled. And that one small thing helped more than Lily expected. Ms. Caldwell saw her. She nodded once. Not warmly, but honestly. The nod of someone honoring a commitment they had made and intended to keep. "We'll begin shortly," Ms. Caldwell said. "Lily, whenever you're ready." The class settled. The noise dropped. Lily walked to the front. She held the poster at her side, not in front of her face, not as a shield, but beside her, because she did not need to hide behind it. She looked out at the class. 22 faces, some curious, some uncertain. Hannah in the second row, with her hands folded on her desk, watching with an expression of complete, uncomplicated loyalty. "My hero is my dad," Lily said. Her voice came out clear, steady, not loud, but carrying, the way her father's voice carried without effort, from something centered rather than forced. "His name is Ethan Harmon. He's a chief petty officer in the United States Navy. He's been serving for 11 years. She lifted the poster. "And this is his partner, Shadow." She described Shadow the way she had practiced, the tan gold and black coat, the amber eyes, the scar above the right ear from a training exercise before she had ever met him. She described what they did together, detection operations, search and rescue support, the kind of work that did not make headlines but saved lives in the spaces between them. She spoke about the certification Shadow carried, the years of training, the commendation for finding a missing child in 4 hours. She spoke about what it meant to have a father who was away more than he was home. Not with sadness, not with complaint, but plainly the way her father spoke about hard things, as facts that were true and could be held without breaking. "I used to think being brave meant not being scared," she said. "My dad told me that's not what it means. He said being brave means doing the thing anyway, even when your hands are shaking." She paused. "My hands were shaking last time I stood here." She looked at the class. "They're shaking now, too." Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. "But I'm doing it anyway," she said. "Because my dad is real. Shadow is real. And the truth doesn't stop being true just because someone doesn't believe it." She lowered the poster. "That's my hero," she said. The room was quiet for 1 full second. Then Hannah started clapping. It was not a polite classroom clap. It was genuine. Both hands, unhesitating. And 3 other children joined before the second beat. And then the rest of the class followed, and the sound of it filled the room completely. Miss Caldwell did not clap, but she stood straight, and she looked at Lily with an expression that had been cleaned of everything performed and managed and professionally composed. And what was underneath was simply a woman looking at a child who had just done something she could not have done herself. "Thank you, Lily," she said quietly. "That was everything the hero report should be." Lily walked back to her seat. Her hands were still shaking. She sat down and put them flat on the desk, and Hannah leaned over and said, "That was perfect." And Lily looked at the desk and breathed and let it be true. Out in the hallway, Ethan had heard everything through the classroom door. He had stood with his back straight and Shadow beside him and listened to his daughter's voice move through the wood without breaking. When the applause came, he looked down at Shadow. Shadow looked up at him. Neither of them moved. But something passed between them, the wordless recognition of 2 trained, disciplined creatures who knew the difference between a mission that had gone sideways and one that had ended exactly right. At the front office, Marsh was waiting with an envelope. He handed it to Ethan without preamble. "Grade correction," he said. "A+, processed this morning." He paused. "The protocol draft will be on your wife's email by Friday. District review starts Monday." He straightened. "For what it's worth, Mr. Harmon, the way you handled this, most people would have come in swinging." "Swinging doesn't fix anything," Ethan said. Marsh nodded slowly. "No, it doesn't." Ethan pocketed the envelope. "There's one more thing," he said. He reached into his jacket and placed a photograph on the desk. Shadow in the field, mid-stride, ears up, the operational landscape behind him blurred by distance. On the back, in Ethan's precise handwriting, "Shadow, SEAL Team 4, Military Working Dog, 2024. "For the file," Ethan said. "So he's on record here." Marsh picked up the photograph and looked at it for a long moment. "I'll make sure it's kept," he said. When the bell rang and the doors opened and children flooded the hallway in their ordinary end-of-morning rush, Lily pushed through the current of them and found her father at the far end of the hall, Shadow at his side, both of them standing the way they always stood, unhurried, solid, requiring nothing from the room around them. She walked toward him, and he watched her come. And when she reached him, she did not throw herself at him the way she had the day he came home. She stood beside him and looked up. "How was it?" he asked. "Good," she said. Then, "Really good." He put his hand briefly on the top of her head, the way he had done since she was small. And then he dropped it, and they walked toward the exit together, Shadow moving just behind them, his nails quiet on the floor. Claire was waiting at the gate. She read their faces before either of them spoke, and let out a breath she had been holding since Monday. She pulled Lily into her arms and held her, and Lily let herself be held. And above her head, Claire looked at Ethan over their daughter's shoulder with the particular exhausted relief of a woman who has carried something heavy for too long and has just been allowed to set it down. 2 days later, Ms. Diane Caldwell was placed on formal administrative review. The district's findings would take 6 weeks. What they would recommend, neither Ethan nor Claire knew yet. And they had agreed, quietly, between themselves, that it was not theirs to drive. They had done what they came to do. The rest belonged to the system, with its forms and its processes, and its slow, grinding corrections. What was not slow was what had already happened. A truth that had been dismissed was now on record. A protocol that had not existed was being written. A child who had been asked to apologize for honesty had finished her presentation and been told, by the same room that had once gone silent against her, that she was exactly right. Lily taped the reprinted poster above her desk that night, She stood back and looked at it, at her father's drawn face and Shadow's amber eyes, at the careful crayon line she had spent 4 days getting right. And she felt something settle in her chest that had been loose and unmoored since Monday. Some things, once broken, could not be fully repaired. She understood that now. The way children understand things they are not yet old enough to articulate, but are already old enough to carry. Trust was like that. Once it cracked, it left a mark, even after it healed. But it could heal. That was the part she had not known before. It could heal because her father had driven 200 miles without being asked. Because her mother had sat across from her at the kitchen table and asked, "Did you lie?" and believed the answer without hesitation. Because a hallway full of children had clapped without being told to. Because the truth, when you refused to let go of it, had a way of eventually filling every space that doubt had tried to occupy. Shadow was asleep on the floor beside her bed, his breathing slow and even, his presence absolute and uncomplicated. Ethan Harmon left for base the next morning. He hugged Lily at the door, held on for 3 seconds, and let go. He kissed Claire once, precise and unhurried. He picked up his bag. "I'll call Thursday," he said. "We'll be here," Claire said. He walked to the car. Shadow rode in the back. At the end of the street, Ethan did not look in the rearview mirror, not because he did not want to, but because he had learned long ago that the hardest part of leaving was not leaving. It was trusting that what you left behind was strong enough to stand without you. He knew, this time, that it was. His daughter had stood in front of a classroom with shaking hands and told the truth, twice, and both times she had not broken. She had not needed him in the room. She had only needed to know he was at the door. That was enough. That had always been enough. A Navy SEAL and his dog, driving back to the base in the early morning light, carrying the quiet certainty that the most important mission he had run all week had not required a weapon, a briefing, or a deployment order. It had required showing up, telling the truth, and refusing, with every quiet, disciplined, unshakable part of himself, to let his daughter believe that honesty was something she owed the world an apology for. She never would again. He was certain of that now. And so was she.